Historically, most non-residential or commercial structures are built with black roofs. Now that's a problem because black absorbs a lot of energy from the sun. That drives up air conditioning costs. In fact, the amount of energy from the sun that strikes a surface is about 250 BTUs per square foot. So that means for every 48 square feet of roofing, that's a ton of air conditioning. Well, that's a lot of energy. Well, California has enacted some standards that basically encourage the use of cool roof technologies. Now, the amount of energy that these technologies can save in the first year alone for new construction is about 9.2 megawatts. And here today to tell us about these technologies and the new standards is Elaine Hebert, who's an energy efficiency specialist with the California Energy Commission. So Elaine, how does California define cool roof technologies?
Well, Steve, I'm going to tell you two different ways. The general idea is that a cool roof, as the name suggests, the surface temperature is cooler than a traditional roof. Most of those are, say, asphaltic based. The idea is to keep the heat from the sun out of the building to keep the air conditioning load down. Now, we also have technical definitions of what a cool roof is. I will tell you that the rules we're introducing in October refer to low slope, non-residential buildings that are conditioned. The rules will be that the prescriptive requirement is that a cool roof have a reflectance of 0.70 or better and an emittance of 0.75 or better.
Can you define in California terms emittance and reflectance?
Reflectance is probably something people understand pretty naturally. It is the bouncing off of the energy from the sun off a surface. That's pretty straightforward. Emittance is a little less intuitive. Emittance is, think about this, think about the roof surface with the sun shining on it, and some of the energy from the sun will be reflected off, but some of it will be absorbed because roofing materials tend not to be perfect reflectors, right? I suppose perfect reflectors exist, but they're expensive materials and have very special uses. So some of the energy from the sun will get absorbed by the roof surface. Now, emittance is a measure of how well or how efficiently that absorbed heat is given back off or emitted. So for example, think about a pair of shiny new metal pliers. And when they sit in the sun for a long time, you know that it's a shiny, smooth surface, and you'll see some of the energy is reflected back, some of it goes into your eyes, and it's kind of maybe even painful if it's very shiny. But if you go to pick up those pliers after they've been in the sun for a while, they're warm, they're hot. You may even drop them because they're so hot. So metal, bare metal like that, is a low emitter. It holds a lot of the heat that it hits upon it from the sun. So we're looking for materials that are high emitters because the more time the heat stays in that surface, the more time, this is how I think about it, the more time that heat has to penetrate through the layers of the roofing material and through the entire roof assembly into the rest of the building. And we don't want that. We want the heat to be reflected off or given off so that we can keep the air conditioning load down.
Any thoughts on how the manufacturers accomplish that?
Generally, white, smooth surfaces are both high reflectance and high emittance. They're working with colors to see if they can get certain pigments into the color that will still be not necessarily light colored, but maybe light colored, maybe medium colors that'll still have those abilities. They're working with, I think, ceramics and other chemistries. There are just a huge number of chemistries out there for roofing materials, and they may come up with some light colors that are not white that will have both high reflectance and high emittance. Now, when you have a granular surface that's not really smooth, the little granules create a lot of kind of bouncing around of the energy, and it's not quite as high reflectance. So they're working to make the granules smaller. They're working to coat them with a light color. I think we'll see a lot of interesting new things in the future.
So, Elaine, what buildings are subject to the new regulations for the 2005 standards?
Title 24, Part 6, defines the occupancies or uses, the building types that the rules apply to. We have a number of uses and occupancies that I can list for you now and will explain. Group A is assembly, that is arenas, theaters, restaurants, and such things. Group B is businesses, that's offices, medical offices, and things like that. Group E is educational facilities. F is factory, low and medium hazard. H is high hazard facilities. S is storage facilities. U is utility. M is mercantile, and that is the sale of merchandise.
So basically, the new energy code is going to require that these types of facilities have a cool roof.
It will be a prescriptive requirement. Now, Steve, let me talk to you about prescriptive requirements. That means that Title 24 presents a list of measures that if you follow this prescription, your building will automatically comply. Alternatively, you can use a computer modeling method of determining whether the building can comply, but the energy budget through that method is determined by a modeled building using all the prescriptive requirements and all the mandatory requirements as well. So if you follow the prescription, if you follow the 0.70 for reflectance and 0.75 for emittance and some other rules which we'll talk about shortly, then your roof will comply. Now, some of those other things are the roof material has to have gone through a rating procedure to rate it for reflectance and emittance. And the Energy Commission has designated the Cool Roof Rating Council as the supervisory entity that oversees the rules for how to rate and test these roofs. So in order to be a cool roof in California, the roof has to have gone through a CRRC testing and rating.
It's for the equivalent of the NFRC for windows.
That's right, the National Fenestration Rating Council. That's right. Very similar.
Elaine, with regards to 2005 standards, what buildings are exempt?
Well, for example, occupancy I institutions, that's hospitals, prisons, mental institutions, and so forth, are exempt from the cool roof regulations. And that's because there are other state agencies that have jurisdiction over how those buildings are built. Unconditioned buildings, process spaces, these are spaces not meant for human occupancy. They're held at temperatures less than 55 degrees Fahrenheit or greater than 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Buildings cooled by swamp coolers or evaporative coolers. Hotels and motels. Any roof with slope greater than 2 and 12. And all group occupancy R residential buildings.
Is there a cutoff with regards to small buildings?
The rules apply to either 2,000 square feet of roof or 50% of the roof, whichever is less. And if they are re-roofing a portion smaller than that, then the cool roof regulations don't apply.
What qualifies a roof to be a cool roof with regards to the 2005 standards in California?
Okay, in addition to meeting the reflectance and emittance prescriptive requirements and being rated through the Cool Roof Rating Council, the roof material also needs to be labeled according to the rules of Title 24. And if it's a liquid applied in the field coating, then there are some physical durability requirements that we also have in Title 24.
Now, what are the requirements with regard to labeling? Does that mean it has to be on the material itself?
It has to have a label that the manufacturer can develop itself, but based on the Cool Roof Rating Council's suggestions, it has to have the emittance and reflectance on the label. I'm not sure, it may have to have the Cool Roof Rating Council logo or some kind of notification that it actually went through the Cool Roof Rating Council procedure. And it has to be labeled somewhere on the packaging or somewhere that a building inspector could verify.
Is it on the packaging or is it actually on the roofing material itself?
I suppose it will depend on the material. Something that is rolled out kind of like a rug, a ply that rolls out may have it right on it, or it may have it on the packaging. Obviously the liquid applied things will not have it. You can't put it in the liquid, so the packaging might, or the trucking container, if it comes in a big tank, may have it, or there might be able to have a bill of lading or something like that that shows what the ratings are.
Can you define conditioned space with regard to the standards?
Yes, the definition of conditioned space is found in our standards in Section 101B in definitions, and it's the definition of directly conditioned space, and it gives the threshold for the capacity, BTU per hour per square foot capacity for the heating and the cooling system.
What about garden roofs?
The standards already accommodate garden roofs through the heat gain calculations in the prescriptive overall envelope method. That means that the heat gain through the roof cannot be more than what it would be for a prescriptive cool roof. Now, we already accommodate that in the standards. It'll be the same in the 2005 standards. And so there'll have to be a calculation done. Now, this is Section 143B of the standards. It looks a little bit intimidating because it's a number of equations and explanations of the terms in the equation. We are working to make that simpler so that it's not so intimidating, and so people will be encouraged to put on a roof that has some energy efficiency characteristics.
Can you define what a low-slope roof is?
That is a ratio of rise to run of 2 and 12 or less.
What about low-slope roofs, roofs with photovoltaics and roofs with solar water heating?
That's right. Solar electric is very popular these days, and solar hot water heating is as well. Now, we make a distinction between if the solar panels are sitting on top of the roof or embedded in the roof. Now, we haven't seen solar hot water embedded, but we are seeing solar electric photovoltaics embedded in roofing material. So let's take those two cases separately. In the case where the solar panels are on top of the roof, it's the actual surface of the roof that we're looking at as a cool roof, and maybe it'll have something on top of it that'll provide some shading and be using the solar energy for a function like electricity or hot water. But it's the actual surface of the roof underneath that we're looking at for its cool roof characteristics. In the case of photovoltaics embedded in the roof, again, we're going to be looking at having those roofs, those people putting on those roofs, do a solar heat gain calculation. Obviously, solar panels are dark colored and will tend to absorb, that's part of what their job is to absorb some energy from the sun and create another use for that energy. So we'd be looking at some kind of way of showing that the heat gain through that roof assembly will not be any more than a prescriptive cool roof, and there may need to be some insulation added to make that happen.
What are the requirements with regards to re-roofing and roof insulation?
Well, Steve, what we're aiming for with the regulations for cool roofing is to maintain the ability of the building to keep heat out in the cooling season or keep it in the heating season. So we're looking at maintaining the ability of the walls and roof, in this case the roof, to maintain that ability, no degradation in that ability. That means when you're re-roofing with a cool roof, you don't need to install or deal with insulation unless you are altering existing insulation. And in that case, you need to maintain the existing level of insulation. If you're re-roofing with a non-cool roof, which the standards do allow, then you need to make up for that energy loss through some other way, such as adding insulation. There are several common types of insulation when we're re-roofing that are used, and I have a sample of them here. One of them is this rigid insulation that you can buy in a supply store. It comes like this in 4x8 or 4x10 sheets, and often this thickness or more. Another common insulation material for re-roofing looks like this when it's finished, but it's a spray-on material that hardens and then takes a coating to protect it from the sun. And by the way, the Energy Commission is working on making it easier to determine how much insulation you need to put in a certain re-roofing situation to make up for the energy losses.
What determines the effective date with regards to the standards for re-roofing?
The effective date of the new standards is October 1st, 2005. We are going by the date of the building permit application for that building or that re-roofing job. And any permit pulled prior to October 1st can follow the 2001 standards. It could follow the 2005 standards as well, but it's obligated to follow the 2005 standards starting on October 1st.
What if a roof material is not tested or rated through the Cool Roof Rating Council? Can it still be used in California?
Roof materials that are not rated through the Cool Roof Rating Council will be assigned a default value for reflectance, and these numbers are very low. So yes, such a roofing material can still be used in California, but the energy budget is going to have to be met some other way.
What about gravel roofs?
We have an exception for gravel being replaced with gravel. And there are 5 conditions that apply, and they're listed in Section 149. And it has to do with if you're taking the gravel off, doing a repair or a little maintenance and putting the gravel back on, we have some rules about that. That case, the cool roof regulations would not apply. The one thing that we need to know about the gravel roof replacement with gravel roof is that if there is a recover board involved, if there's going to be that material added as part of the re-roof, then it triggers the cool roof regulations and a cool roof must be applied.
What about historic buildings?
Steve, qualified historic buildings are exempt from all parts of Title 24, Part 6, the Energy Code.
Well, there's a lot of information here, Elaine. Can you summarize this?
Well, the new regulations coming into effect October 1st will apply prescriptively to non-residential buildings with low-sloped roofs that are conditioned. The roof materials will have to be rated by the Cool Roof through the Cool Roof Rating Council procedures and labeled. There are exceptions for roofs that are 2,000 square feet or 50% of the roof, whichever is smaller. There are exceptions for limited amount of rock and gravel that's being replaced with rock and gravel. And for all other buildings, that's all residential and all high-sloped roofs. The requirements are only related to a compliance option rather than a prescriptive requirement. And again, the exceptions we talked about include institutions, which are hospitals, mental hospitals, and prisons. Occupancy and use I, according to the California Building Code.